More on the National Union, Sunday, November 18th, 1934. By way of introduction, I feel obligated to develop a few thoughts for the thousands of persons who wrote to me last week, as well as for the many other thousands in this audience, relative to the National Union for Social Justice. As you already know, I was impelled to launch this organization chiefly because I was deluged by a multitude of letters coming from Catholics and Protestants and Jews, from shopkeepers, industrialists, farmers, and laborers. These letters insisted that the people are surfeited with mere promises, that they are demanding action. More than that, these letters taught me that there is scarcely a man or a woman in this nation who does not recognize the fact that this is no depression from which we are suffering. This is an absolute breakdown of the old economic system, both industrial and financial, through which we and our foreparents struggled for the past 150 years for prosperity and succeeded in getting it despite capitalism. No matter how logically insanely it was conceived, capitalism became so infested with abuses that its nature became identified with the abuses themselves. Knowing these things, the patience of the majority of the people is becoming exhausted with all these efforts made on the part of those who are hopelessly striving to restore prosperity by preserving the financial and industrial forces which existed in this country before 1929. By no means are the people unanimous in demanding a change or the establishment of a new economic system. The most powerful group in the nation is solidly opposed to any change. These are the American Bourbons of banking and of industry who, like their predecessors in Royalist France, never learned anything and never forgot anything until the Revolution occurred. This group desires to patch up both the industrial and financial system of yesterday and retain it with only a few accidental modifications. If they have no bread, let them eat cake is still their idea of social justice. Another group, which is rapidly growing, is seeking the extreme measure of communism, which advocates the total abolition of all private property, together with the nationalization not only of natural resources, but also of trade, of commerce, and of industry under a form of government which is technically known as an oligarchy, or the rule of a handful of powerful commissars. Besides the doctrines of these two groups, modern capitalism and modern communism, I believe there can be established a new school of thought where the vast majority of the American people are willing to learn and then rebuild their nation on the age-old principles of positive morality. I believe that neither capitalism as we know it, nor communism as it operates in Russia, is desired by the ordinary American man or woman. One is just as obnoxious as the other. They are both bad trees which can do nothing better than bear bad fruit. They are both breeders of poverty, both founded upon unjust principles as they both lead inevitably to revolution. While we refuse to adopt plans or the philosophy of the communist, we also refuse to support any policy or any group of men who endeavor to restore to the power of the American capitalism which is associated with want in the midst of plenty. The regimented poverty of communism and the created poverty of capitalism are both equally unnecessary. With this idea in mind, I accepted the challenge of millions of letters received during the past 2 years to give you people something else besides talk, to give you an outlet for action. The people want a new deal that is a new deal, where the old kings and queens of finance and the legal jokers of politics are thrown into the discard. They want no marked cards. They simply want to play the game of commercial, industrial, and financial life, if you care to call it such, honestly and fairly according to the rules of social justice. Rules based upon the inalienable rights of human nature and not upon the sordid basis of warped individualism. This organization, known as the National Union for Social Justice, is in its cradle. The word national implies that it is not for Michigan or for New York only. It is for every state in the nation. The word union implies that it is not for Catholics or for Protestant or for Jew alone, nor is it alone for laborer or farmer or for industrialist only. It is for all our citizens, irrespective of race, of color, of creed, or of profession. It is to be dominated not by Catholic priest or Protestant minister or Jewish rabbi, but by American citizens as such. The words social justice point out that it is, first of all, opposed to the absolute injustices which are rampant in our midst, and signify that it stands for a fair and equitable distribution of wealth, of profits, and the establishment of those principles which will guarantee us a right to life, to liberty, and to the pursuits of happiness. Lastly, it is an active organization which will not be contented to talk about these things, but which plans to reduce these things into practice, so that we citizens who form this nation shall be enabled without fear of exploitation to enjoy the plenitude of God's blessings which have been poured upon us and which are being withheld because of a famine, not of food, not of scientific ability, but of social justice. I have laid down 16 principles, the realization of which is our ultimate objective. These principles are so substantially related to this National Union for Social Justice that anyone who is not willing to accept them in their entirety is not welcome in this union. They represent the solid ground upon which the majority of us will march to victory. They define clearly our hostility to both communism and American capitalism as we know them. But they can never be realized under our form of government unless we can number at least 5 million adherents to these principles and thereby establish a balance of power independent of parties and of politics. There is no new political party any more than the United States Steel Trust or the United States Chamber of Commerce or the American Bankers Association or the coal or oil or textile interest constitute a political party, despite the fact that they retain powerful lobbies in Washington. But it will be a union to be reckoned with by every senator, by every congressman, and by every president who we elect to legislate and to execute the laws of this country for the welfare of the majority of the people in this country. I openly admit that this union pretends to be nothing less than an articulate, organized lobby of the people to bring the united pressure upon the representatives at Washington for the purpose of securing the passage of those laws which we want passed, solely with the end in view of breaking down the concentration of wealth, of eliminating the abuses which have been identified with capitalism, and of building up legislation for social justice instead of legislation that breeds communism. You have elected representatives, but once they occupy their seats at Washington, they are buttonholed by every selfish interest working against your interest. The purpose of this organization is to tell them what laws you want passed and to give you, the laborer, the agriculturalist, and the forgotten man just as much influence as is possessed by the vested powers of wealth. It is a sorry day that such a move on our part is necessary. but an openly avowed rubber stampism has made this necessary. Listen to the feet that sound on the steps of the Capitol. Visualize those that enter the senators' offices or the voices that plead for privileged legislation. No one walks or speaks for the labor or agriculture as a handful of senators and representatives fight your losing battles. We are finished surrendering to the mighty lobbies of wealth. We are anxious to give expression to our definition of the New Deal in such a manner that our representatives will not be mere rubber stamps, but will truly represent us in what we want and not accept our tax money for salaries to represent the lobbies of wealth, of power, and of greed in what they want. It is not planned to be an organization which is satisfied with empty, vacuous meetings which are liable to fall under the control of self-seekers. Meetings mean nothing. We have had them for the past 150 years and have experienced the growth of two parties whose representatives, despite all their meetings, have failed to accomplish the purpose for which they were assembled. The old political gatherings were entirely outmoded at the birth of radio. When I present to you the National Union for Social Justice, I present a new forum as modern as the radio, uncontrolled and uncontrollable by the machinations of politicians who will not be able to return from Washington an alibi as they kiss your babies that they did not know your wishes. More than that, with the carefully selected board of legal advisers consisting of Catholic, Protestant, Jew, and Nonconformist, with whom I am surrounding myself, I will from time to time actually draw up suitable, definite, concrete bills for legislation, which will be presented to your representatives with the backing of every member of the National Union for Social Justice. They dare not alibi. The days for alibi and for misrepresentation have passed if you dare to utilize this common denominator of the radio. In unity there is strength. There is no dissipation of our strength through intermediaries who need to pass your wishes on to me. You can deal directly. Therefore, I invite you in the name of social justice to unite on the 16 basic principles which were enumerated last Sunday afternoon. My friends, I prefer professional politicians to remain outside this union. There is not one professional politician in this nation who can conscientiously sign up with these 16 points. Politicians are not going to use us. We plan to use them. They have had their chance and they have failed. Too often their motto, "To the victor belong the spoils," is not in harmony with our motto, "To the American public belongs social justice." Thus, if you are in harmony with this proposal, if you believe in the adoption of these principles which I have just recited to you, if you are willing to utilize the well-established, the long-established, and the efficacious method employed by the power trusts, the steel trusts, and every other lobby at Washington, I ask that you do not delay in making it your personal business to write a letter to me at Royal Oak, Michigan, stating that you are willing to join this union. There are no fees attached to it. Its expenses will be borne by voluntary contributions. Moreover, organizers for members of this union will be going about at a later date to secure more members. Please do not contribute 1 penny to them. If you care to contribute towards the maintenance of this open radio forum, do it directly. This is your chance. I accept the challenge to do my best to secure the principles of social justice.